intelligence here at Informa Tech. I hope you're enjoying the show. Seeing everything you want, having the discussions you want as well. We have a really exciting panel here, talking about customers, which we all know what's at the heart of anything, it's people. So I think that's what we're going to focus on today, around how do you use AI to make those customers the heart of your organization. So we have some great panelists, and I'll let each introduce themselves in their role a little bit more. But Adam Wenchel from Arthur AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adam. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Arthur. We help companies do performance monitoring, bias monitoring for their models. And my background, started this company about 3.5 years ago. Prior to that, I was actually, my previous company got acquired by Capital One, and so I started and led Capital One's AI team for 3 years, and actually started early in my career at DARPA doing AI research, so I've been doing this for a while. But I think at Capital One, and it got me thinking a lot about the way these models impacted people relevant to this panel. And so at Arthur, that's something we help a broad range of customers work on. It's like, if these are impacting people, are they doing it in a positive way that helps your business and it also helps the people they're serving?
And Rajiv from BNY Mellon.
Yeah, hi everyone. Rajiv Sandal. So I head up the product development for digital assets at BNY Mellon, and also advanced solutions, where we do a lot of work with AI machine learning. So I work across the enterprise in BNY Mellon looking at use cases. So my background is in technology. I've spent 18 to 20 years working on emerging technologies, right? AI machine learning being one of them. Glad to be here.
And then Supreet from Morgan Stanley as well.
Hi everyone. Hopefully all of you can hear me loud and clear. I'm Supreet. I am currently a data scientist and a data strategist at Morgan Stanley, which essentially means that I build AI solutions and I'm also the product owner of those AI solutions. Prior to this, I was a data science consultant in the healthcare space, so I've moved from a regulated industry to a very regulated industry, and you'll see some of my views around that in this panel. So hoping to have a very productive panel.
Excellent. Thank you all. So let's start with the question in a little bit of a level set. What role do you see that AI plays in customer centricity?
Should I introduce myself?
Sure. So I can start. I mean, obviously customers are at the heart of just about any business, and so something we think about. Some of our customers, like, it's fascinating. Like, there's a large healthcare company actually we work with, and where the number of AI touch points a customer had, AI customer touch points they have in a given month is actually one of the top metrics that they surface all the way up to the board level as a measure of their success. And when you think about it, like that sort of, whether it's customer servicing, it ends up being like one of the highest leverage areas, and in many cases one of the most expensive areas too. And so it's really perfect for investing in automation and kind of streamlining that part. But there's a risk if you don't do it well, right? Because we've all had sort of mediocre experiences with sort of automated systems, right? So it needs to be done really well. But if you can do it well, the upside is massive.
Look, so BNY Mellon, it's no different, right? So I think customers are front and center of anything we do, right? And as part of the digital journey, right? So I think we have had a lot of initiatives, tools, and processes where we are trying to constantly improve the customer experience, and AI is a core tool in that toolkit, right? So over the years, with different use cases, we have seen apply these AI models not just from a concept perspective, but actually running in production, where we have leveraged machine learning and AI to bring that customer focus, right, to the organization. So
Yeah, I think just seconding the sentiment, both of my panelists here. Definitely any AI solution has to be around the customer behavior, around the user behavior, and that is why it's always a best practice to capture the analytics first, understand the customer behavior before even we think about those advanced AI solutions. But it just doesn't stop there. You need to keep collecting that user feedback because it's possible that your AI solutions might become redundant over time as the customer data evolves, customer behavior evolves. So it's important to capture both the things at whatever point in time your AI solution is, depending on the size of your company.
So I think we hear a lot in organizations about customer first, customer delight, customer success, all these terms. And that might be a problem you're trying to solve, but can you dig into a use case that you've seen using AI to actually, what was the problem you were solving, and what is the use case that you applied to that?
I can start. I think we are all aware that this is a finance state, so I'm going to keep the AI use cases finance focused. We know that AML, KYC, fraud detection, these are like some of the pain points of finance industry, and all of us are trying to solve that through AI. But I think another one is personalization. Everyone wants to be the Amazon of their industry. All the users like to see what they want to see at that particular point of time. So I think that's one of the interesting use cases that most of the banks at this point are trying to solve.
Okay. I can give an example from a top 10 US bank that we work with. Customer servicing, like call centers and things like that, end up being a really important touch point, but they're also very expensive to operate. They're typically the largest cost center at a consumer bank, and so naturally they're looking to help automation and AI. But again, it needs to be done well, right? Again, you don't want to create a bunch of frustrating experiences for their customers, and so kind of the way that this one bank is approaching it is starting by having an AI agent that's listening in. Sure, there may be a chatbot offered, but most people still want to call that. But having essentially an AI assistant for the call center people, so that the AI agent is sort of popping up to the human agent, like, hey, have you thought about this? Maybe this is the resolution of the problem, or this is what they're looking for, or a resource you can give them, or a product they need. And all that kind of provides really good training data that as things, as the quality of these sort of fully automated agents gets better, gradually they'll be able to shift the workload, but they'll be doing it with all the learnings from this sort of like intermediate step. And so I think there's a lot of really kind of powerful possibilities like that just have to be set up properly, and there's a journey to kind of get to the ultimate goal.
Yeah, look, we're doing a lot of work, as I was saying earlier, so I can share one or two examples. But if you need more, I think you'll have to join Bank of Mellon. So that's my plug-in, right? That's why I'm here to get some data scientists and machine learning engineers. But okay, so like we built a solution, and that ties back to the customer centricity. We have a model, or we have a machine learning solution where we are predicting security lending fee movements, right? Which actually help our desk to optimize, right, how they are actually lending out the securities in the market. So I think if people are familiar with the security lendings and how it works and all that, I won't get into the details of it, but it's a crucial element of how you optimize clients' portfolio and how you optimize how the security is sitting with us, right? So that's like one example of where really how we use machine learning. So settlement failure is a very like anyone in the finance industry who works in the settlement side knows that asset serving settlements it's a huge issue, right? So we have models there where we are able to predict whether the trade will settle or not, right? So that helps us go back to the client and say that if they have to change something and send us the strict messages back, right? So like this, there are like a lot of things we are working on, again, with the customer centricity in mind, but those are like some use cases we're using.
So these use cases, we talked about personalization, we talked about automation, optimization there as well around the security element. When you think about all of these use cases, are there common challenges? I heard maybe talent, or are there very specific challenges for the use cases, for individual use cases?
I think it's C, all the above, right? There's both, but certainly there's certainly common ones around getting the data, having talent, getting kind of breaking through data silos, and making sure that you have like the right. You're marrying sort of the technical talent with the sort of business intent, which in a lot of organizations it can be a challenge culturally. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and look, the only thing I would add is yes, data is definitely there. I think it's finding the right business case, right? So that's you start with that, right? So if you have the right business case, because a lot of times, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was doing some of these projects, it was hard, right? A lot of people know about machine learning, they're familiar with it. That's becoming less of a problem now. But it's still, I think you start with the business case and figure out, is that the business case for machine learning, or is it actually an application development thing, right? You don't need really data scientists to be spending time on that, right? I think you define that, and then obviously the data challenges, and you have the right talent to build the stuff.
Yeah, I think apart from the data quality issues and the right amount of data to build your AI use cases, regulated industries definitely have an onus to protect customer data. PII is, again, an essential component that we need to consider. So how do you protect that? How much consent do you have from your customers to build those AI solutions? How are you leveraging responsible AI solutions? How are you plugging explainable AI techniques in your solutions? Are again some of the challenges and also opportunities for growth in finance, I would say.
So I think one piece here that was brought up and we could dig into is the business case. So that takes us back to the beginning. And you think about your customers, how do you pick the business case? Do you pick the right use case? How do you know what your minimum ROI is on these type of projects? You dig into everything that kind of revolves around that beginning step for your business.
Yeah, sure. I think it was a really good call out. There's a lot of nuance. What we find when people are starting out is there's a real kind of hesitance to start with like the crown jewels, right? Because there's just not much tolerance for risk around like the things that are really driving the business. But if you get caught on the other end of the spectrum, even if you're successful and you're not really moving the needle in the business, then it's kind of a science project that gets over-glorified, and that's not really where you want to be putting your best and brightest. And so there's usually a process. I think the most successful ones are, maybe it's not the most, the crown jewels of the business, the most important use case, but it's one that will move the needle on the business if you're successful. And then, like you said, measuring the ROI, that's something that we help all our customers do. Is like, you really want to be able to measure this. And the amazing thing is, I think that among, like, if you think of like a normal CIO's portfolio with AI projects, there's been all sorts of stats about how often they fail, things like that. But the ones that are successful and it's becoming a higher percentage over time, actually, it's not uncommon to see 100% ROI in the first year on a well-run AI project, which is just, compared to traditional software engineering projects, it's just unheard of. So the returns are there.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think you need to look at it when you talk about business case. It's not just a problem statement. At least the way we approach it is that from a business perspective, what is the value it is bringing, right? So sometimes it is hard dollar numbers, and sometimes it's soft, right? That doesn't mean those projects we do not pick it up, right? Sometimes it's people experience, right? So sometimes there are hard dollars associated with it. But I think the starting point is to look at the problem statement and see, is there a business value to it, or this is like a one-off experiment which should go in the R&D level, right? Not actually the business case level. So I think that's where we start, and I think then you build upon, like, is there data there? A lot of times you have the business case, but then you're spending 6 months wrangling the data, right? So then like you look at the data. So before actually we have anyone hands on keyboard starting to, at least my experience is that, like, the duration of building a model is really less small compared to the first 2 or 3 stages where you're actually putting the business case together, putting the data together, making sure it's there, and then you actually go and start making some of the stuff. And that's how it used to be approaching.
Yeah, completely agree to all those points. And I think at the same time, it's always business versus what do my customers want, what do my priorities look like in the company, and I think that is where all that stakeholder management and over communicating the priorities and having that candid discussion helps to build those AI solutions. But I would like to touch upon what the success looks like, because that is again very subjective, but in my experience, you should have a benchmark performance, and your AI solution should be topping that benchmark. That benchmark can be established through an existing tool that you might be leveraging to solve a problem. That benchmark might look something as simple as mean or a median. and your AI solution should just be able to top that. If that has been done, that can be considered one of the success metrics. Other success metrics can also look like increase in customer acquisition, user engagement, depending on the use case in hand, which are obviously very much more mathematical.
So I do want to move beyond the beginning of the project, but there's a concept that we didn't hit on here at all, that Supreet brought up earlier, which was responsible AI. So when does this begin for an organization? Should it not begin in the business case aspect?
Yeah, I think it begins from the time you actually start procuring your data, and it's basically on the practitioner to protect that customer data. You need to determine at that time, okay, what is important and what is not to build my model. For example, like social security number, age, they might not be important factors to build your model. So you don't really need them. So I think that is the time I feel like it comes inherently, okay, I have to build a responsible AI solution. And then the other aspect is during your model building process, you also have to think about, do I need the most fancy model, which will be a black box for the business and for others, who are not well versed with machine learning. So taking that glass box approach, starting with a vanilla model and building upon it, or leveraging models like Lime or SHAP so that you're able to justify your AI results is important.
Yeah, look, I think the responsible AI, explainable AI, ethical AI, right? All these are at the heart of what we stand for as a GCP, right? So even in non-AI projects, right? Like we make sure that everything which we do, we have a lens of that in there. Now, in that context, as part of our governance framework, right, which kind of oversees our entire machine learning model governance, right? So at the very beginning, right, when a machine learning model or models, it's proposed, that your business case is proposed, data scientists or the owner of that model needs to fill out like the whole questionnaire around. So that's the framework piece of it, right? And then as we go through the model governance, and that's an independent body, right, who's governing and validating the models, right? They look at different features. They look at parameters, whether it's sharp or line or other values, right? And all of this is actually discussed as part of the model validation also, right? So if we do not have, I know that machine learning is progressing at a tremendous pace, and it's harder and harder to explain everything, especially you start building RNNs and multi-layers, and it becomes harder and harder. But I think that's where data scientists get challenged by the validation team, right, as they are going through this whole governance cycle, that do they understand what is being built, right? So this is all part of at least our governance framework and validation framework where this is done.
Yeah, I think that both my panels have captured well. What we want to add is, this has really become a continuous process. It needs to be, because gone are the days, in the old days, a data scientist would train a model, they would deploy it, and it would remain pretty static, and they were typically pretty simple linear regression models, and they might sit out there for 2 or 3 years or 4 years before they were retrained and redeployed. And in the machine learning world, everything's becoming much more dynamic, much quicker. People are doing, we have banks that are doing fraud models where they're retraining them once a day and looking at maybe moving faster than that. And so when you get to that point where you're really automating all your statistics and all your data science, you need to automate the oversight of it as well, because you need to do validation during model development time, but when you deploy it, the world doesn't stand still. The world's constantly evolving, and so just because they put a certain set of validation metrics on the historical data doesn't mean it's going to be the same level 6 months down the road, or 2 months down the road, or a week down the road. And so that kind of continuous automated monitoring throughout the life cycle is really critical to getting this right.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go back then to this. We have a business case, and now we want to move into production. We've all heard there's a lot of drop-off between POC to production in projects. Do you have advice? How do we increase that success rate in the finance industry so that that move from POC to production and scaling is more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, we've seen a big change over the last few years because people have been making investments in sort of the AI infrastructure with that exact goal in mind, and also governance frameworks and things like that that actually move a little more quickly than historically, because you need to move faster. And so now, and the other thing is like the tool chain is maturing, right? So there's all sorts of open source cloud services and enterprise software vendors like us that have much more mature products now that can help accelerate this stuff. When I started the AI team at Capital One in 2015, 2016, there just wasn't that, and it was much slower going because we had to, there's a bunch of stuff we had to build, and nowadays you don't have to build; it's just available. And so it's much quicker. And so we're starting to see people get hundreds and more models into production at a much faster rate, and they're starting to put in governance processes that allow for that don't take a 6-month review. And instead of getting a model in production in 9 to 12 months, at which point it's already A, can die on the vine, like you're saying, or B, at that point, the world's already shifted a lot, and you're kind of behind, and you've missed out on 9 months of value. So we're starting to see those times, people coming down to like a couple months or even faster in some cases.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is just ensure like all your stakeholders are in sync, right? Because what ends up happening a lot of times is that you spend weeks and months on this thing and you're ready to go to production, and all of a sudden one or the other stakeholders say, okay, they don't agree with what is there, right? So a lot of times, right, failure to production, a lot of projects do not, make it to production is one of the stakeholders either does not agree with it or does not have the buy-in from that stakeholder, right? So that's the only other thing I would say, that like just make sure that as you progress through the project, as you're defining the project, as you're defining the use case, right? So right to the end, you have all your stakeholders with you, right? So that you don't run into this issue of models not being deployed to production.
I think I'll just add one more point, which is if you want to get your model to production, the only thing is have a defined launch strategy. The launch doesn't have to look like, okay, let's roll it out to all the customers. You can do a phase-wise launch it to a few customers or maybe a group of people, capture that feedback and see how your model performed. And then you might want to retrain it or gather some stakeholder feedback and then roll it out to a larger audience. That way you can at least make sure that the chances of failure are less and everyone is in the loop as to what was happening.
Excellent. Okay, so we talked about there's been a lot of change in the last 2 to 3 years versus what we've seen previously. Is that changing the cost models as well? I mean, surely it is if we have the infrastructure open source coming in, the availability, speed as well in this industry now. What have you seen with the cost structures changing? And I think any tips there in terms of now we're rethinking our ROI definitions, right? What's available? How do we think about this differently?
I can start with that. So I think each organization deals with like costing year-end, right? So I'm pretty sure everyone is busy with the budgets for next year. So everyone deals with the cost structures differently. I think what has worked for us is that, like if you bucket it into infrastructure, which you need GPUs, CPUs, whatever, disks and all, right? So centralized infrastructure to scale up machine learning, right? So it's a different thing than running these on your MacBook and VDS or what have you, right? But actually to scale this up and actually deploy, you need centralized infrastructure which is scalable, right? So what we have been able to do is the technology team has been able to build this centralized infrastructure which can be used to scale this up, which allows us to normalize the cost, right? So that every use case is not standing with its own infrastructure and multiplying the cost by 3x, right? So that's one way you kind of handle the cost piece of it. And the second is talent, right? And that is something you need to grow internally also, right? So if you're always, it cannot be on demand, right? So you need to figure out
worked in a firm of 60 folks, 6,000 folks, and now 60,000 folks, and the cost structure looks extremely different in all three of those. I think I have some common lessons, which is to always think about building scalable and reusable solutions. And every time we are thinking about a solution, talk to people, talk to other groups. Maybe they've already built it, and you can just leverage that for your own use case. The other thing is definitely cloud technology, and leveraging cloud might be expensive, but at the same time, when you're trying to think about building AI solutions, if you're actually serious, taking them into production, that might be an inevitable step. So it will depend on where you are in your AI life cycle and what does the size and the budget of your firm look like at that point in time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just to corroborate what Supreet said, what we're seeing is people they're investing in the central infrastructure, which is what happened, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, everyone started getting excited by AI, and all these little, in all different departments, these systems started popping up, and they're all kind of cobbled together, and they're all extremely different. And that was great. It's a good way to get started. It's good to start with experimentation. But now there's been a lot of learnings from that, and people are investing in sort of centralizing that infrastructure in a way that helps people be a lot more productive. And so we have customers who now have gone from having like a dozen models in production 3 years ago to now hundreds. And I think that in a few years, large organizations that our customers they work at they're going to have 10,000 models in production. That's just going to be their whole state of thing. And so the speed at which you can deploy them is increasing drastically, and that's only going to accelerate. Now, it still has to be done in a way that doesn't create a bunch of risk for the company, and I think that's the key.
As you build these models, something I've heard each of you talk about a little bit is strong stakeholder management. So we're talking about using AI to support your customers, to get closer to your customers. But on the other side of this, there's also people. And that's inside your business, the stakeholder side. Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of, we've also talked about things shifting, changing, the industry moving faster. Do you see how you deal with stakeholders now changing? Are we past the education phase and more to the buy-in phase?
I can start. I don't think we are past the education phase, because education never stops. You always have something, right? But I think it's more about keeping those lines open and channels open, right? When you conceptualize an idea, when you're ideating with them, right, and you find that, I'm not talking about just the business stakeholders, right? A lot of these are around issues and challenges. Could be around the security, right? Could be around the data, right? So it could be around the technology infrastructure. So it's just not the business, it's broader overall. So I think it's just keeping the communication lines open, and especially since the models are evolving, right? And we are learning at the same time also, right? As the new research is coming in, making sure at least putting that in the context of the stakeholder, what does it mean to them, and how does it impact them? So as long as I think those lines are open and those channels are open, then I think it definitely leads to high success rate of these use cases being successful and put in production.
Yeah, I'd say echo the emphasis on continual learning. So if you think about it, commercial AI is still in its infancy, and in many ways I liken it to the way software development was in the 1980s, right? Which at the time probably felt super sophisticated, but we look back now and look how far we've come and how much has changed in the last 40 years. And that's the same kind of curve that we're going to hit with AI as we move from sort of deterministic programming to probabilistic reasoning, which is what AI is, and supplant a lot of that traditional software along the way. So yeah, you don't want to stop learning now.
Yeah, I think the education phase has transformed a little bit in a way that leadership is more open, and now everyone presses on having a data-driven culture, and they are more adopting to AI technologies and solutions, and there's less resistance, I would say, as I've seen in the past 3 years. But yeah, on the other hand, definitely even your stakeholder management could look something like procuring the data, and some of the large firms that procurement of data can look like 2 or 3 months. It's possible that the specific feature and specific data point that you're looking at will take that much time. And as Rajiv mentioned, you might be close to production, but that data is not available, right? So all of those things can be avoided with over communicating and having proper product roadmaps, launch roadmap, and educating everyone at every step. Some might argue that yes, that may delay your process of your AI product launch, but again, you don't want to be in a situation where everything is ready and you can't launch because people are not on board.
It's a lot to accomplish. When we think about how do you use AI to help your customers, to learn more about your customers, and I've heard so many tips out of this conversation for the audience. We've heard define launch strategies, leverage the cloud, stakeholder management, to making sure you're planning for scale as well. But it's a lot to accomplish in a full organization. As you're building these AI models, in that journey towards customer centricity, if you had to break it down, what would be, for the audience, your top 10 and where to start?
I'm not sure I have a top tip, right? But so see, all like what I'll say is that I've been doing this for years now, especially on the AI machine learning side. So I think we still do not or realize that the potential AI has, right? Like at least every institution, bigger bank institutions, they're sitting on a vast amount of data, and you can actually mine that data and create some really, really sophisticated solutions, like the two examples which I gave you, right? Like around fee prediction and also the trade analytics, right? So that's just like, we didn't have to go deep into it, right? And we are working a lot with a solution where we can deep into some of this data. So I would suggest is that really, really look at your data, right? And you would see, and I think it is that you can actually use that knowledge and learning to influence your business and help them understand what they can do with it, right? Like, because they understand the business side of it, but you are the one who needs to bridge that gap and say, okay, go to them with some of the ideas and see how you can help them.
Yeah, echoing that sentiment, I think investing in data is inevitable. Having proper data quality frameworks, and also having the right kind of people in your team, right? Data governance team, data strategists, data analysts. If you are, obviously a full-sized company who can afford all these resources, it is important to have that full team so that you can build these sophisticated solutions. And in the end, I would just like to close by saying, data scientists alone cannot build these sophisticated solutions. It is a collaborative process, and that is what we need to understand. So,
Yeah, I agree. The one other thing I would add, all the time I talk to companies we work with, and I'll be talking to someone who's in charge of developing their